one of the most important days of your life. Please give a huge round of applause to our virtual graduating class.
Thank you for your 300 days in space. Welcome home.
Hello, good morning, everyone. We have Mr. Mike here. Good morning, Mr. Mike. The video
Good
is
morning.
good morning. Is a very good video from Alibaba Cloud. So, welcome to the ABCDE virtual event. I am James, the moderator today. First of all, I would like to say thank you for joining our event. If you can't hear my voice, please try to use another browser. Better is Google Chrome for the best experience. Okay. During the event, you are allowed to use the chat box and Q&A function if you have any questions. Thank you. So now please allow me to do a short briefing about our events team, ABCDE. The ABCDE stands for AI and Big Data Conference for Data Engineers. We focus on the topic relevant to artificial intelligence and big data. We have held this event in few countries in Southeast Asia and India for the past few years. I hope today's conference will help the participants to gain new ideas and insights regarding AI and big data technology to accelerate tech industries faster and solve real-world business issues with big data analysis. Today, we are thrilled to introduce our first keynote speaker, Mr. Mike Leow. He is the Senior Compliance Manager from Alibaba Cloud, and he will share about AI and big data in the cloud. How can we better secure the data in the cloud? And welcome, Mr. Mike. The time is yours now.
Thank you, James, for your kind introduction. Let me switch over my slide. I hope you can see my orange color presentation slide.
Yep, I can see.
Okay, fantastic. So good morning, everyone, all the audiences around Asia, I suppose. And for the next couple of minutes, I will share with you about Alibaba Cloud, where we are, and also the pressing issue about the privacy compliance and what it means for data engineering like you guys when you're handling huge amount of data using different kinds of algorithm or what we know as artificial intelligence. These are the area I'll go through. first of all, just a quick overview of Alibaba Cloud, where we are, our footprint. And then of the second portion will be the issue around or the data protection and privacy requirement around the globe. And then also the third and the most important session of the day here will be areas to watch out for if you are using a cloud to store your data or to even run your artificial intelligence algorithm. And what are the areas to watch out for as a data engineers. So now the footprint here shows our footprint from the west coast of America to the east coast, as well as to Europe and Asia. We are actually the number one in terms of the providing infrastructure as a service in Asia Pacific, thanks to the majority big footprint in China that we have. But we are slowly growing our presence in the ASEAN. If you look at the chart, the timeline, since 2014, we have started our data center expansion in Hong Kong, followed by Singapore. And then we have also data center in Australia, Japan, Malaysia, India, Indonesia, and we are not stopping here. In fact, we will be growing another few more countries. In times to come, we will make the announcement too. So this is where we are. Now, when we set up our data center, it is very important to understand where and what are the compliant requirements by the local government. So it is important for the team to actually know the law there. Now, as we all know today, in the Europe, the most stringent legal requirement in data protection or privacy, to some laymen, is the European GDPR, or also stand for General Data Protection Regulation. In fact, not too long ago, two tech giants has been penalized by the French regulator of up to 100 million euro for just to fail to apply a cookie consent, a simple tech approach that it has been not been really taken into serious account. So this is very important. It's just for a cookie consent, they will be heavily penalized. And that is just in one of the country. Imagine in EU, there are 27, let alone the America. So in US, it's a bit inconsistent as compared to the European, because in US, they have state law. Some of the state, for example, the California, they have their privacy, the Consumer Privacy Act. And also in the whole federal, they have the FCC, the government, in terms of using it as a federal law that cover the entire US. However, there are other states that today are in the midst of actually turning on their privacy law for their various states. Now, moving away from the American and EU, we also see the Canadian privacy law that has been exist for the last 30 years. And also they are actually going through a period of revolution or change, because the law was written in the absence or in the lack of consideration of the internet world. So that's why they are actually, or perhaps already revised their law that caught up with the revolution of technology. And then, of course, nearer to us, we have the Australia and the New Zealand, the Japan, as well as the South Korean privacy regulation. Now, closer to us in ASEAN. Now, down here, the map shows our 10 ASEAN countries. And out of the 10, today, 3 countries has already have what we call a comprehensive data protection regulation. The first is we have the Philippines, and then we have the Singapore, which is the most active in terms of enforcement. And of course, in Malaysia, they also have the PDPA as well. And then in Thailand, they're supposed to have their law enacted, if I'm not wrong, in May this year. Unfortunately, because of the COVID-19, the government decided to delay another year to next year, around sometime this time. So if you have a business there, or if you are designing a software for the business there, you may need to take into consideration what is the privacy or data protection requirements. Likewise, the Vietnamese government announced in January this year that by December, they wanted to turn on their privacy law, which is a very, very ambitious timeline. And such a short timeline, they wanted to turn on the privacy law to protect the sovereignty of the data of their people. And of course, Indonesia, they have actually sent the draft data privacy law to the parliament. In fact, they have already gone through a vigorous round of debate in terms of what law to have, what law not to have. And they are also announced that they are trying to turn on their privacy law this year, if not next year. And in Indonesia, it's such a huge island, and I'm sure a lot of us are actually developing a lot of the application for their people. And that's why it is a very important piece of legislation that you understand, because the penalty sometimes could be very hefty, or sometimes they may even have jail time. So you need to understand the regulation and the penalties that follows. Okay. And closer to our heart, closer to us in Singapore. Now, what is actually data protection law? So basically, it is about a process of protecting employee and client or your customer data throughout the entire data life cycle. So it starts from the moment you actually possess your employee or your customer data until you decide to dispose it. So in the life cycle, the various stages consist of the storage. So when you storage them, you need to ensure that you have a proper protection or security under point 6, what we call protection obligation. And when you wanted to use the personal data, make sure you have the right consent, and the consent is against the purpose that you have notified the customer or your client. So that's why for point 1, point 2, point 3, they somehow, in some other part of the world, the regulation are actually all lumped together. But in some regulation, they actually split it. The consent, the purpose, and the notification are all separate sections. But in some regulations, they actually lump it together as one. So that actually govern how you can use your customer data. Take, for example, what would be abuse of a customer data. For example, if you are only going to a cinema to watch a movie, but somehow they collect your personal data and then start to market you about some other things, like maybe cars or what, that is basically an abuse, because you give your personal data to book a movie. End up, they use your personal data to telemarket you about some other thing. It could be a hairdresser, a spa, or a holiday, which totally different, deviated from your original intent when you give your personal data. So that's a kind of one of the very simple kind of violation of the personal data under the usage. And I move on to disclosure. Now, disclosure sometimes is required in a contract. For example, if you were to book a trip to holiday after the COVID, of course, then you may need to give your particular to the hotel in Japan, likewise to the airline, so that the hotel will know who to receive when you are there. Otherwise, they can't. So when you actually book the hotel, you technically already consented it. So what we call deemed consent. And the disclosure is to the right party. It is only supposed to go to the hotel, not to the restaurant next to it. So sometimes if somebody, they may have partnered their restaurant next to it, they may have written down in their privacy policy. But sometimes if they don't, then they could fall short of notifying you that they're supposed to do so. So that is where the notification obligation actually refers to. And then, of course, your obligation cease when you decide or when you no longer possess your customer data. That means you delete it, but delete in the proper manner. Don't just chuck in one place and then after that and leave it to the Garanguni. The answer is no. Back in Singapore, there were a few cases whereby some financial institute, even healthcare institute, they have all the old record, health record or transaction record. And because it has been collected more than 7 years, 10 years, and whereby they feel that they don't need it anymore, they wanted to recycle in the name of, preserve the environment. They want to recycle. They pass it to the Garanguni or sometimes recycle to get the noodle store to use to pack their fried bihun or fried pancit. Technically, that is violation because behind the paper are all your medical record, your financial record. Do you want that? The answer is no. So before the privacy law even exists, these are very common. imagine if you recall 20, 30 years ago, if you were to go to a hawker center, you get a packet of noodle. If they don't use those, they are very clean, but with some ink, though. But then after that, with a layer of plastic sheet, it looks okay. But if you look carefully, it's someone else's personal data. So that is a violation by the company because they have failed to dispose in a correct manner. So for us, we have to follow a set of standard to dispose your data correctly, especially like a cloud service provider. We have hundreds, millions of hard disks, all customer data with us. And when the hard disk is not working or when the customer decide to end their relationship with us, what do we do with the data? We return to them. We destroy them. We cannot hold them because we are a service provider. That's how we make sure that our data is safe. And then, of course, we talk about transfer. And then, of course, the most serious one, what happens if you fail to comply any of the obligations? You get penalized. So in Singapore context, with the recent Act review, the penalty has go beyond $1 million. Instead, if your annual revenue is 20 million, potentially you get 2 million maximum fine. So the more money you earn, the more fine you potentially get. So that is how the upper line of the penalty has shifted. That's how serious Singapore government is. Of course, we are still far away from the GDPR. Their penalty is even heavier. All right. So I will just touch briefly around here because today our focus is still on how to secure. Rather, the whole suite of the story about personal data. If we have other chances, you can meet me in other platforms when I can talk more about data protection regulations that will benefit you when you design your system, especially your algorithm, especially when we talk about the GDPR requirement of data protection by design and default. So it is also another big topic that will take days to explain. But for today, I'll just stop here in terms of the data protection, but move on to the rest of the requirement or things to watch out for when you are putting your data in the cloud. So like I said, the next section is about, so before we actually talk about the data in the cloud, let's try to understand what is artificial intelligence. I'm sure if you guys are already a practitioner in the field, you will understand that actually artificial intelligence is basically a deeper or the more advanced is that when you are able to have using the machine to learn the behavior of human, and then it then just churn out to a robotic kind of reaction. And of course, the more advanced with more and more new data, the concept of deep learning is then introduced into the artificial intelligence. Now, the artificial intelligence will be very powerful coming. Now, then what is the definition of big data? Now, the short definition of big data is it can be explained by 3 V's: velocity, variety, and of course, the last one is, what is the last one? I can't remember. Volume, yes. So big data comes with a huge diversity of information. It can be structured, it can be unstructured. What is meant by structured? In the data in a database, they are put in a very structured manner that is called a structured database. The data that is coming that is unstructured are the like of chatbot. So when you have chatbot and over a period of time, when you collect all the chat between your customer and your robot, it becomes a huge volume of unstructured data. And it makes it more complex if you do allow to collect not just text, but voice messages, images, as well as video. Now that makes it even more complex to become a unstructured data. So how does the data then structure themselves between structured and unstructured? And that is all up to the data engineer, how they structured the way the data was ingested and how they arrange and pack in various silo within the database. And then from there, how your algorithm will to run and make meaningful information to your customer. And then Alibaba Cloud, we also have our own AI engine. So, and how the data is being shared across, right? Then, of course, the next section is about understanding the responsibility between the data controller or customer or yourself, as well as the responsibility as a cloud service provider, also known as what we call a data processor. So data controller and data processor are legal terms listed in the privacy law around many jurisdictions. Likewise, of course, in some country, they like to call it a third-party processor rather than a data processor. And of course, in some regulation, they actually pack it all together. Now, so as a cloud service provider, we mainly have three-layer or three-level kind of product offering. First is the infra as a service. The next layer is a platform as a service. The third is the software as a service. So between the infra as a service to the software as a service, basically, in terms of the security ownership, as a data controller or yourself, the security ownership actually are higher when you actually use a infra as a service, and slowly switch towards the cloud service provider when you choose to use software as a service, because a lot of the mechanism or a lot of the hardware actually shift from your environment into the service provider environment. So as you can see on the screen, the dark blue color is actually a company that hosts the application on premise. So from the different kind of layer, the ownership of the security belongs to the company. As it so slowly shift towards the right side, right, to the SaaS, you see the color become light blue. What it means is that then the ownership of the security move to the cloud service provider. This is the concept of shared security responsibility. Now, a lot of users, especially new users, when they go to cloud, they think that, they have the wrong concept that as long as I use cloud, all security responsibility belongs to the cloud service provider. The answer is no, it's not that. So there is a different scenario. So if you are using infra as a service, basically I just provide you the computer server and the box, and you have to install your own operating system, which is the platform. So if your operating system that you fail to patch it, the responsibility is yours, not the cloud service. Because as a cloud service provider, I only have access to my box, but I do not have access to your operating system, let alone the patch that need to be secured based on the patch released by the owner of the software. So over a lot of time, a lot of engineers, especially when they're new to cloud environment, they overlook it. And when security issues come out, then they realize that, actually they own it, they actually own it, they own it. So these are the areas that's very important that you understand. So this is another chart that actually show what are the ownership that is owned by the cloud user with a company like yours, and which is the ownership by Alibaba Cloud as a cloud. The top down, the security responsible of a customer means yourself, who are the cloud user. You have to ensure your user business security. You have to ensure the application security. You have to ensure the user data as well as the user infrastructure. And it depends what kind of infrastructure. If let's say the infrastructure is owned by us, then of course it belongs to the cloud. But the infrastructure owned by yourself, then it's yourself. And then for Alibaba Cloud, as a cloud service provider, we have to ensure the product security, the virtualization. We have to make sure that all the hardware are sound, as well as the boundary or the physical. Just to share with you, how do we achieve our security compliance? So in Alibaba Cloud today, we actually are trying to follow the world-class security requirements. So there are different tiers of security and privacy requirements, from the global to regional and to industry specific. So just to highlight, in terms of the security, we have the MTCS, that is a security standard given by Singapore government, the CSA, or the IMDA. And also we have the OSPA, which stands for the Outsourced Service Provider Audit Report. And we also have the PCI DSS Level 1 certification by our payment card industry. We are also certified under the PPA, and we were the Personal Data Protection in Singapore. And we also have the ISO certification of ISO 27018 under the Personal Data Protection in the Cloud. So let me dive into the compliance portion. Now, on the global landscape, the common certification for security are the likes of CSA Star, the famous ISO 27001, and then of course you have the SOC 1, SOC 2, SOC 3, and of course if your system is a payment related system, you need to have PCI DSS. Of course, you can extend a little bit on your ISO to get ISO 27018, 27017, and 27701. So these are all the ISO standard, right? So the next one is the regional one. So the MTCS is a Singapore standard. The German is the C5. And also we have the Iranian, so we have Japan, the FISC or NISC for the Japan side. And of course, in the last three at the bottom are the Singapore privacy, the regulator. So the first one is the Data Protection Trust Mark. And this year, in fact, in April this year, Alibaba Cloud was certified APAC CBPR and APAC PRP. And today we are only one of the cloud service providers in the world have this APAC cross-border privacy rules. What it means is that we have gone through a very stringent privacy assessment or audit, and it was in compliance with the APAC privacy framework. And the auditing body is the IMDA of Singapore, which is a government agency that takes care of the privacy regulation. So we've gotten these two. And the industry-specific kind of regulation are the likes of TISAC, HIPAA, TPN, MPAA, OSPA. So these are the industry-specific, from healthcare to movies to outsource. So these are the quite general industry kind of certificate that we have to share our compliance level and standard within Alibaba Cloud. So that's of the high level of the presentation that we have on how you need to secure your huge amount of data within a cloud service provider, and what to watch out for, and how to make yourself compliant when you are holding your. Let me see.
Mr. Mike, I think.
Okay, I have a question here. Yeah.
Sorry, Mr. Mike. I think your line is from my side. I feel a bit lag. I'm not sure how is our participant.
Oh.
Yes, some participants say same.
How about now? Is it better?
Now, maybe you can close the video and just left your voice. I think it would be.
No worry. I
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, can you try that? Yes. Yeah, it's better now.
How about now? Is it better? Okay. Okay. Yeah, I think the home bandwidth is not enough. I should up the bandwidth. So nevertheless, let me go through some of the questions that we have from our audiences. And in fact, I'm very happy that today we have over 100 audiences here with us today. So the first question is that while pandemic accelerate the digital adoption, how will you envision privacy and data protection is increasing, repair, and tightening which will be a headache for businesses to comply. How can Alibaba help? Very good question. In fact, you're right. So how Alibaba help or how any other third service provider can do is to actually up our own standard so that the headache and the problem is resolved by us. So when our customer come and use us, they will be sure that they are using in a very safe platform. Rather than you go to a service provider who have real problem that you are not sure whether when you park your data with them, whether it is safe. In fact, I have a few, in fact, in Singapore context, there are few cases whereby a customer who actually conduct a survey and subsequently park the survey information and the result to a third service provider. And the service provider, after the engagement, forgot to delete away the data. And the data got exposed because it wasn't properly secured. And all the information about the customer are out, especially with children. Wow, the customer was very jumpy and then complained to the owner, complain the whole world, and then they start to put it on the forum. So you are absolutely right that it will be a headache. So it is not I would not say a single party kind of effort. Everybody need to understand what is the legal requirements. But of course, choosing a service provider who understand and able to show that they already complied save you a lot of trouble than to find yourself get into trouble by yourself. Go to a vendor that they are already understood and they can advise you rather than you start yourself. So that is how you can actually lower your risk. And also you can show your regulator and your customer that you actually choose a service provider who has who is security and privacy compliant. So that's where that your customer are very comfortable that you are actually using this service provider who has the standard. So that's how you are able to ensure. So that's a very great question by one of our audiences from Malaysia. Yeah. So let's see what other question do I have. There's another one. Does Alibaba Cloud provide service respect of data protection of the client? Is it okay? Somehow the question disappeared. Is it the same among various country or government? Let me try to understand the question. Provide service with respect to data protection. Okay, for Singapore, in fact, we do. What we have shown our customer is that we have gotten all the 3 data protection certificate from the regulator here, and there is any other cloud service providers that have done that. So we have shown that we actually pass our regulator in terms of how we protect our customer data. Of course, when it comes to a 0-day exploitation, nobody can be sure that they can 100% protect themselves. But at least at this point of time, at this juncture, when we go for assessment, the regulator says that, okay, you have met the requirement, that's why we are given the certificate. Now, the next question, is it the same among other countries? The answer is no. Now, if you compare to GDPR, if you compare with the Philippine law, if you compare to the Singapore law, they are all slightly differences in terms of how they penalize and in terms of the definition. But the overarching concept of data protection and privacy is all about the data life cycle of the customer that you collect. Always remember, when you collect, you use, you store, and how you transfer, how you archive, until the time, even how you delete it, is all governed by the law. So at the moment you hold your customer data, you are accountable for. So make sure that you understand the local requirement of how you protect. That's where earlier I shared with you all the certificates. So that means we understand the German requirement, we understand the GDPR requirement, we understand the Singapore requirement, and better still, those countries that have what we call compliance certification, we try to achieve it to show that we are in compliance, and you can tell your customer that their data is in good hands. So I hope I answered the question from our India participant. Let's see what other question there is.
And Jocelyn also helped to answer a bit. She say sometimes there are conflicts between different regions, regulation like the incidents in financial exchange data between US and EU. Thank you, Jocelyn. Okay, so let's go to the next questions. Okay,
Yeah.
with the
With the acceleration of
Miss-
blockchain, how much relevant does the data protection law have, and is their implementation of GDPR a big challenge, and how does Alibaba Cloud address it cross-border? Very good question. So there are a few questions. First of all, you talk about cross-border, then you talk about GDPR, and then you talk about law. Now, if you are very familiar with the privacy landscape, you will know the recent Slime 2, how he actually kicked the privacy shield between the US and the EU in terms of data cross-border between the two continents. So because of Slime 2, he challenged the privaciness of the American Privacy Shield. Today, it is no longer valid. But that said, company that has presence between Europe or have to transfer Europe customer data to the US, they have to rely on the standard contract clauses that satisfy the GDPR requirement. So today, even though it has been the safe privacy shield has been invalidated, but they are still able to rely on the contractual clauses. So, and that is also how Alibaba has that. We also have contractual clauses among all our different entities across all the country to make sure that we have a consistent security and privacy approach when we transfer our customer data across various countries. All right. So with blockchain, sometimes blockchain has a purpose or have the motivation of hiding the identity of the customer data. Now, so it depends whether does Alibaba have access to the personal data or not. Often than not, we don't, because we may just be selling an infra as a structure or as a service or a platform, and we do not go into the customer database whereby we are able to see the personal data. A lot of time, we may not have the purview of the customer data, so we may not know. However, that said, whenever our system is being compromised, if there's any touch it, we are supposed to inform our customer that their system has been attacked. Whether there is any form of unauthorized access or what, we will inform them. That is to ensure that we actually met the contractual obligation, and that was one of those requirements that's there. So the answer, no problem. So what it means is that yes, Alibaba Cloud is able to comply because we are still having our standard contract clauses when it comes to crossing border of data of EU citizen, vice versa, any other citizen around the globe. Yes. So let's see what's the next question. Does Alibaba Cloud provide quantum as a service? Not at the moment. You are too advanced. We haven't gone into quantum computing yet, so not yet. I'm not so sure how many of the cloud service providers have that, but we are still working on it. But when the service is available, I don't know. I'm not from the product side, so I can't tell. Thanks for the great question, though. So the next question is, my question is, we all know securing our client data and data about us, but what about the actual impact of leaking and exposed data from our client? Very good question. So now, in Singapore, the regulator is very active and they are very helpful. They actually compile all the past cases that they actually investigated, and they have a record of all the penalties. So the highest penalty so far in Singapore history is the $1 million, or rather 750,000 million fine and a $250,000 fine to two individual companies for the same incident. So what it means is that the Singapore regulator has already fined a data breach of up to 1 million. And that case was involving our medical data of our Prime Minister in Singapore. So that is the most serious case in Singapore. Whereas in the GDPR or in the Europe, there is a website that you are able to see all the penalty in the 27 EU state. They do state down the impact or the financial penalty of the personal data leaking or being mishandled. Now, that is just the tip of the iceberg. Now, when you actually have a data, so-called data breach of your customer data, not only you need to face the penalty by the regulator, you lost your customer trust that it will be very hard to gain back. The second part is that you need to spend a lot of time re-engineer your engine or your system so that the regulators will tell you that you are safe to resume your business. Until then, they will stop you from moving on your business. They will put you a stop order. It happened in Philippines before, in my previous organization. So when you do something wrong, they will put a cease and desist order to stop you from doing anything until you fix it or until they give a green light. So they will stop your business. And lastly, it affects your business and cause your share price to go down. So the true impact of a data breach is not only just the fine by the regulator. The three other impact is the loss of trust by your customer. They will choose your competitor over you, whether you are cheaper or not. You will spend extra time to rebuild your system in order to make it compliant and restart your business. Thirdly, your business suffer and you may be put on a stop order and you cannot make any more money. Isn't that bad enough? And in some cases, like in the long time, I don't know whether any of you can recall that Yahoo suffered a major data breach, and that breach happened around where they were about to sell away part of the Yahoo business to another company. And because of the breach, the other buying company used that to bargain down the sales price. In fact, it was a sale lower than X billion dollar. So they sold it at a lower price because there was a data breach. And if you are buying, either you turn around and walk away or you ask for a bargain, because they may say that I may not know what is the potential fine that I'm going to face. After I buy, I own it and I have to answer the music. So this is where you suffer. So don't just look at the so-called the legal consequences placed by the regulator, but in actual fact, it will hit your business tremendously. You lost your customer trust, you need more time to rebuild your system, and ultimately you lose business. So that is how bad it is in the digital era. Right? So great question by Luis. Thank you. And let's see any
Thank you, Mr.
other...
Mike. So so far, I think from the participant side, they don't have any more questions. And if you guys have any more questions, please feel free to put in the Q&A. And we have set one more questions because of the time is going to end now. So do you have any questions, participants? Yeah. So I think they are already there. So I hope Mr. Mike answers all your questions. And today speech session will be end here. And thank you once again. Thank you, Mr. Mike, for the great sharing. And also thank you all of you guys take part to the speech sessions. And we have the next section will start at 12 p.m. We will have a keynote speaker from another company that is one of the fastest growing startup companies in Southeast Asia, which is Grab. So please be sure not to miss the session at 12 p.m. later. I will see you again. Okay, thank you, Mr. Mike, and we end the speech here. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.